ER Studio and Collibra have had a partnership since 2021. This video talks about some of the features of the integration. ER Studio is a tool for data architects, and data architects will be designing and documenting data assets. So traditionally databases, also JSON files, the data warehouse, etc. It's an enterprise tool, so we take an enterprise approach to designing and documenting data assets. So we use common or enterprise data models that we use to provide architectural patterns into the designs of those data assets. So we've got a lot of organizations in banking and finance and healthcare that will create enterprise conceptual, enterprise logical models and then use those to design application databases and warehouses. Since 2021, the relationship with Collibra has been really important. We're seeing a lot of our customers desiring to connect their data architecture team in IT with the data governance team to be able to drive one from the other, to be able to use the knowledge of data architects to kickstart and support a data governance initiative, and also then to be able to take the policies in the data governance tool in Collibra and use those to drive security and the designs of data assets. And the mission is to have the two tools working together to form a company-wide data ecosystem. Users of ER Studio will go through a design process. So they'll start off with a logical data model. So the mission in the design process is to take requirements for any data asset, convert those into a graphical, business-friendly view of the requirements. So we create a logical data model in business language. We then use ER Studio to convert that to a physical model, applying naming standards for whatever technology it is. This might be a SQL Server database or a Databricks database or even a JSON file. So the architect will then take that physical model and enhance it, adding in specific features for that technology, and then generate the code which will actually create that data asset. And the idea is that we have a gated approach. So we can have an approval step after the logical model, another approval step after the physical model, and then we generate the code. And then we support change cycles. So changing requirements would require changes to the logical model, again another approval. And then we've got tools to propagate those changes, compare and merge those changes into the physical model, again refine that physical model, and then compare the physical model after it's approved with the actual data asset, and then we can generate change code like alter scripts. So that's the standard design process. Now on top of that, we'll incorporate the notion of architecture. So we want reusable patterns throughout. So this is where the enterprise data model comes in. And the sort of process that we'll go through with customers, we'll say, right, we'll create an enterprise conceptual model, we'll understand the subject areas or domains of the organization and hold workshops with those domains, understanding what are the key concepts for them. We'll then create a more detailed enterprise logical model where we'll go through those important concepts from the conceptual model and add more detail. So we might find that we've got a taxonomy of different types of customers. We understand the attributes, how do we identify the customers, what are the relationships to the other concepts, and create this standard enterprise model. And ER Studio will have relationships between these different layers for traceability. And this really is a model of how the business works. So we've got the master data entities, the key transaction types, and then the operations that one performs on the other. And we'll use this model then within our designs. As we're creating a logical model for an asset, we'll pull standard reusable entities from the enterprise logical model so that all of our designs have got consistency across them. So here we've got two assets. This one might be a relational database, this one might be a JSON file. Same logical model, different physical realizations of that, and the tool handles all of that. We might also document COTS packages, so we'll reverse engineer it, create a physical model. We've got tools to help you create nice logical definitions of these things. So here we've got an entity called client, and then we can map that back to our standard term that we use, our standard concepts for customer. Now the idea here is we've got a lot of useful knowledge in this model, so we can help drive data governance. So we're seeing a lot of customers coming along, purchasing Collibra. They've got a fresh data governance team that's getting going, and they're saying, well, can the knowledge that data architects have in ER Studio kickstart the delivery of value within Collibra? The answer is yes. And this is the sort of approach. So a standard data catalog really has sort of two parts: the technical data dictionary, a map of the schemas of all of the data assets, and then we've got our business glossary, and the two map together. So what we can do is, from our standard model of the business, we've got features to be able to harvest terms from entities and attributes and create a first cut business glossary. And not only that, the relationships between these entities and their attributes and each other, we can add that to the business glossary so that we can create a nice ontology, and we can push all that across to Collibra. So we might see some customers that say, right, we want to harvest the glossary into Team Server, which is part of ER Studio, push that to Collibra. Collibra is now set as the master. The data stewards now take over, and they can refine those business terms, change names, change definitions, add classifications and policies to that. And again, we can help. So that process, we might have a large number of business terms. Where do the data stewards start with all their work? We can use this structured model either in Collibra or in ER Studio. So now maybe we've pushed these logical models and the business terms across to Collibra. So what we're looking at is a model in Collibra. You can use this structured approach to then work out where do we prioritize, which terms do we start with first. Okay, let's start with everything around customer and its subtypes. The next part of the process is to go through all of our data assets. So we've got a business glossary with the information that the organization cares about. We've classified it, we've assigned our policies. We now go through all of our data assets and map it to the business terms. So again, ER Studio and the data architects can help. If we've been designing these assets within ER Studio, we understand what they are. We've got access to the Collibra business terms in ER Studio. So we can create these mappings, and then we can publish models of the data assets across to Collibra along with the mappings to the business terms. And we can publish both logical and physical models with mappings between them and mappings to the terms. So we can kickstart the creation of the catalogue. ER Studio is commonly used to design data warehouses, so this enterprise model is really key. We're going to use this model to design and ensure consistency across the different layers of the data warehouse. And we might support medallion architectures, data vault architectures, or Inman style architectures. So let's have a look at ER Studio. So this is the Team Server web part of ER Studio. Users can browse business terms in this part of the tool. So I've browsed for a term called party. I can read all about it. I can see a hierarchy or taxonomy of party, looking at the employee term here. I can see for this business term, what are the terms is it related to, what are the attributes of this particular term. Employee relates to a commission payment. Commission payment, I can see what attributes it has. Commission payment has a commission payment value. And at every step, I can open this term in Collibra, and I can see that the metadata, the properties of the term are the same in both tools. There's a synchronization that occurs between them. So we have a custom property system in Team Server. We can map properties of Collibra terms to ER Studio terms, and we can keep these models synchronized. Also, the relationships between this term and other terms, and also the data assets are managed in here. And again, we add a little link back to ER Studio so that we can hop between the two different tools. In ER Studio, I might want to ask, where is this information in terms of my models? So here I can see that commission payment value exists in a number of places. It exists in a source database here, my HR database. It exists in my enterprise logical data model and in my data warehouse. And I've got the different layers of the data warehouse here, gold, silver and bronze. And also, this is the next part we're going to talk about, is data products. So as part of a data mesh initiative, we might have designed data products. We might have a logical model of that data product, and there's physical realizations of that. So all of that has been mapped in here. And again, we can push all this model across to Collibra. So if I go and look at this entity, commission payment, I can hop across to Collibra. So I can see the metadata here in Collibra is the same as ER Studio. This has come from ER Studio. Here's the attributes of this entity. The relationship to the business term, part of models, and again the link back. So people could also find all of this information in Collibra, and maybe we want to hop back to Team Server. So we can hop back to Team Server, read all about the entity and its attributes and its keys, and maybe then start to look at a data model diagram that shows this entity. So we've got two tools working in harmony, one being updated from the other, and different roles can ask different questions from each of the tools. Self-service data is a really important part of Collibra, and things are changing in the world, so the whole data mesh, data as a product approach is becoming really important. So that data product delivery process really starts in Collibra. Collibra can maintain a catalogue of data products maintained by different domains, and people can come along and browse for that data. So the approach is this. We've got the organization divided into different domains. Back in our conceptual data model and our enterprise logical model, we might see those as those different subject areas. Each domain will conceive its own business glossary and start to conceive data products. Products will start out with something conceptual with some basic requirements, and this is where Collibra and ER Studio will work together to try and refine those requirements into something that is more tangible and something can be approved. So within Collibra, we'll create the notion of a data product contract. We'll then hand over to the data architects to then design a logical data model for that data product, and we can publish that logical data model back to Collibra. So then the first gate arrives. There's a conversation between the original requester of that product, the domain owner, and the data architect to agree the design of that data product, the logical data model. Once approved, then the data architect will then continue the journey designing the physical asset that will then realize that data product. And some data products might have multiple realizations. It might be some tables in the warehouse. It might be a Kafka streaming service or a JSON file. The data architects in ER Studio will perform that design process, reusing standard patterns. We'll continue that design journey and then realize those assets. And once the assets have been realized, they can be then published in Collibra against those data products. An important part of the design process for these data product contracts is the notion of standardization. So again, the enterprise model is really important here. So some organizations might say, we'll have one single enterprise logical model. Every entity in that is effectively a foundational data products, and then we can craft aggregate data products from this with those reusable pieces, which will kickstart the design process of these domains and also ensure that we've got consistency across the products both within a domain and across the domains. So we want one notion of customer across all domains. That notion of standardization might vary across companies. So some organizations might say, okay, we want to keep those enterprise models, those standard or common models, separate across each domain. So each domain might build its own logical model and again reuse the pieces within there to design their data products. So data products are consistent across that domain. There might be some notion of sharing of common concepts between the domains. Other organizations might create some overarching common model, which we could refer to as the model kernel, and we can share those common assets, again ensuring that we've got consistency across the products. The key thing is for a data product supply chain, two tools and the two groups of users are going to be working in harmony. To define the governance framework, we can create the domains and define the business glossaries. This could be done either in Collibra or ER Studio, or a combination of the two. Understanding the catalogue of source data assets, building a basic data catalogue. That can be done with a combination of ER Studio and Collibra working together to understand those data assets, document them, classify them. And then for the data product delivery process, then again, the sort of scoping, contract, design and deployment and the consumption processes is done by a combination of the tools and the teams performing different steps within that process. And the benefits of this is that we've got an effective design process for data products where we've taken requirements all the way through to delivered assets in a controlled process with lots of gates for approval by the relevant people. We're using these enterprise or common models to form a palette of foundational data products so that we're ensuring that we've got standardization and consistency across our data products, which means that we're improving quality and trust in our data products. So we've built a deep integration between ER Studio and Collibra. It's not just a simple import-export mechanism. The integration allows synchronization between the models. It allows collaboration. So the two tools are now working together to form a data ecosystem. And this allows the teams of people to work together, to collaborate, to get to value much faster, to make the policies and rules within Collibra actionable. And together we can produce a complete end-to-end data product delivery process. If you've got opportunities for this solution, then reach out to us. You can contact me directly at jamie.knowles@idera.com. I'm the product director for ER Studio.